I'm dropping the hammer.
No, you're not.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Dropping the Hammer with Darrel McFadden. I'm Darrel McFadden, and this week we have I say this pretty much every week. We have a very special episode for you, and this time I mean it. This time
we have Michael McDowell.
Yes, Crow.
I'm not waiting anymore. We have Michael McDowell, the guy we've talked about for 30 episodes now.
Yes. After 30 episodes of McDowell Watch, we literally just got done talking to 2021 Daytona 500 winner Michael McDowell for about half an hour. It was a really great conversation. I really enjoyed it. It kind of ended abruptly because we had such a little window to work with, but we did it.
We maximized the time.
But yes, Crow and I just got done talking to Michael McDowell. We're about to bring you that interview. We're not talking about Las Vegas this week because Denny Hamlin won. Nothing else happened. And we're going to Talladega this weekend, where Michael McDowell has a chance to possibly win. He finished third there in the spring. But anyway, here is our exclusive interview with the 2021 Daytona 500 winner and playoff driver up until 2 weeks ago,
and
Michael McDowell.
And Lyrical Gangster.
And Lyrical Gangster, Michael McDowell. Enjoy. So yeah, welcome to Dropping the Hammer. All year we've had a weekly segment dedicated to you called McDowell Watch.
Yeah,
where we've been tracking your ups and your downs throughout the season. Like once you've won the 500, we were like, okay, we're just gonna keep track of what he's doing. He's automatically got the best year of his career. Let's see where it goes from here.
Yeah.
So now that you were unfortunately eliminated from the playoffs, we thought we'd have you on and we could just talk about what this year has been like for you.
Okay, cool.
But first, we have some audio to play for you.
All right.
But we would like you to cue it up. If you could cue it up by asking Crow, what time is it?
All right. Crow, what time is it?
McDowell Watch.
Dum dum.
It's your theme music.
I like it. That's awesome.
Cool.
But anyway, all right.
There was one other clip I wanted to play just to kind of set the mood and get everything started off started off great. Sure, you may recognize this.
Up into the outside wall. He'll take Kyle Busch with him. Everybody now racing off the corner in a horrific crash on the final lap of the Daytona 500.
And we are now getting word from NASCAR. The winner of the 63rd running of the Daytona 500 is indeed Michael McDowell. They can go ahead and celebrate now.
I'm so thankful. Such a great way to get a first victory at Daytona 500. Are you kidding me?
So, Michael McDowell, how many times have you, in the last 7 months or so, gone back and watched that moment?
I don't know. I mean, if you by myself or something like that, probably maybe only 2 or 3 times. But I've done a lot of interviews, right? So you see a lot, and you hear a lot. So that's why I haven't had to go back and revisit it too much, just because, we had a lot of interviews those next couple months afterwards, and you still have them. So, but I mean, it's awesome. I mean, it's, it feels like a really long time ago. I think our season's kind of like that, it's a long season. And so it feels like, man, that was forever ago. But it's fun to relive those moments and enjoy it. And, obviously, as you guys have been watching, there's ups and downs throughout the year. So it's good to have the ups. The downs aren't so much fun, but, it's all part of the whole year and the journey.
So, I mean, the year's not over yet, but up to this point, you make the playoffs for the first time, you win the 500, you get kicked out of the playoffs after Bristol. How do you encapsulate the season up to this point so far for you and your team?
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag because we got not just the 500 win, but we started out so strong.
Yeah.
With really 3 top 10s in a row. We went, from the 500 to Daytona Roval to Homestead. And even beyond that, we had good runs as well, So the start of the year was going so well. And then, we kind of hit our, I would call it like our normal stride of, some weekends 20, some weekends 15th, 16th, kind of in that normal range where we expect to be. And then we hit a funk of, just poor finishes, whether it be mistakes or mechanical issues or crashes. And, unfortunately, it's just been, it feels like a month and a half, 2 months of that, where it's just back to back to back to back. So that's been tough. I mean, it's, you go through those different moments in the season. And when, like you said, we still have a lot of racing left. So you want to finish strong. The positives between, all the ups and downs have been that our race cars have been competitive and been fast. So, I mean, it really started at Sonoma as far as the downhill, trajectory is like we were running in the top 10 easily in the top 10 last lap, got together with Suarez, and then, he spun me out, and, that went from being a 8th place finish to a 30th place finish, And
how
then
much of that, sorry.
No, go ahead.
How much of that early success do you attribute to just like that energy coming from, that big win, or just like the preparation you did in the off season?
So I would say, depends on who you ask on our team, they'd all answer different. But for me, I would say 10 or 20% was just the energy from winning the 500. I would say most of it came from, how we finished last year. Like the end of 2020, we were running pretty well. We were in those teens a lot of the, the back half of the season, and, had some top 10s, had some really good runs, but more than anything, we had speed. So going into 2021, we felt like, we had time to work on our cars in the off season. There wasn't a lot of changes, with NASCAR. A lot of times you're chasing changes. And with the pandemic, the last 2 years, there hasn't been these big significant rule changes. So we were able to, make our race cars a little bit better. And so we sort of felt like we were going to have an opportunity to, to run in those top 10 to 15, those first few races. And obviously Daytona, we know that we have a shot to win. So it was not a shock, but at the same time, it was nice to be able to do it. So it's, like I said, it's the momentum kind of rides up and down, right? But the speed in your race cars is what allows you to kind of get back on track. And so even into the playoffs, I mean, I don't think they could have gone any worse than they did. But it wasn't from a lack of preparation or speed. Our cars were actually really good. And unfortunately, it was just too many mistakes. Obviously at Darlington, I got loose there, hit the wall, that killed the day. But I felt like we literally had a top 10 to 12 car there, which is really good for us. So I was really pleased with what my team was able to do as far as digging down deep and building faster race cars to get ready for the playoffs. And then Richmond, the same. Richmond, we probably weren't quite as good as we were at Darlington, but I felt like we could probably run 15th. And then we had, massive mistakes with pit road, and it just all fell apart. It just kind of fell apart. But the good news is we've had speed, and so we should be able to get back to running strong and finishing out the year strong, hopefully.
So, like, what how difficult is it for you to you win the 500, then you go through 20 races or so of waiting for the payoff of that to happen, which is the playoffs, and then the playoffs happen, and it, like you said, it just goes about the worst way you possibly could, and then it's over. Yeah. Like, how do you process all of that for yourself?
Well, a couple different ways. The first thing is, in racing, you learn that you have to move on quickly. If you don't, you'll just stay in the funk, and our sport doesn't really allow that, because you got to go next week, and the show still goes on. So you can't stay in the moment too long, highs or lows. So for the playoffs, that's part of it. the second part of the playoffs is we knew going into the playoffs that it was going to be extremely challenging for us to move forward. We knew that. We were looking at, two tracks that are probably our two worst tracks in the first three. And so we sort of knew that this was going to be an uphill challenge. So, that's part of it. I think if you're Kyle Larson and you're running for a win every single weekend and you get knocked out in that first round of the playoffs, it probably stings really bad. And for us, it stings because it was self-inflicted wounds and we actually could have, had a chance of advancing. But at the same time, we knew that the probability was pretty low. So, for us, it's about getting as much results as we can and trying to, beat a few guys in the points still. We still have that opportunity to do that. The next 2 weeks are really important. Talladega, Charlotte Roval, really important for us to get at least top 10s, and really that's kind of the mindset is we know at the beginning of every year, all right, here's our 10 tracks that we have a shot at having top 5, top 10 runs. And we got to maximize those races. And in the beginning, we did really well maximizing those races. And then now we've kind of tapered off. So we just got to get back into, getting those results at those places because, that's what gives us that energy and that motivation. And we know that every week it's not like that. So we got to make those ones count. So
with Talladega, where you finished third in the spring, so that means you have a shot to get that win. So what would it mean for you with either Talladega or the Roval to have an impact on the playoffs, even though you're no longer in it? Like you can like still say, hey guys, I'm not going away. I'm still here. I'm impacting what's happening to you.
Yeah, I think it's a unique situation when you're not in the playoffs and you're racing at those races, but at the same time everybody understands it, right? So yeah, it doesn't change my approach. I think Talladega just do what we always do and try to be aggressive and be up front. So I think that the one nice thing this year is we were in the playoffs. So even if you say he isn't in the playoffs, like the fact that we were in the playoffs, I think gives us a little bit of leeway with the other 12 guys that are racing for a championship. Not that you can just be irresponsible and jeopardize somebody's season. You wouldn't want to do that. But at the same time, Talladega and Roval, those are races where those things can happen regardless of who it is, So everyone knows that these are the two wild cards, right? And so what happens. But yeah, you're definitely thinking about that stuff.
So like you mentioned, you guys benefited from there not being a lot of change from year to year from last seasons, but that's going to be very different this offseason. Everything's changing. So like with 6 races left, with the next gen car on the horizon, what can you guys do as an organization in these last 6 races that could have a tangible impact on what you guys are doing come February?
Learn nothing. I mean, nothing will apply. I mean, really, it won't. I could try to make up things and tell you, but it doesn't. Nothing applies. But what does matter is results, right? Results are always good. We need to score more points. We need more top 10s. We need more top 5s. And, we need to have a shot at winning at Talladega. And then just going in the off season with momentum and confidence helps, right? And just overall, the overall atmosphere and attitude and, it's always good to finish the season strong so that you go into that off season and everybody's kind of pumped up and feels good, and that has, a good impact on how you start the next season. So it is important, but as far as, information carrying over, other than confidence and feeling good about yourself, nothing's going to carry over. Unfortunately, that's, just part of as big of a change as we're making. I mean, nothing will carry over. If you just pit stops, everything changes, right? Everything about it, tires, wheels, brakes, there's nothing that, will correlate. So yeah, there's still a lot to race for though.
How strange of a position is this to be in as a driver, knowing the universe of the NASCAR Cup Series is just going to be so completely unrecognizable in 6 months?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's, a great opportunity for me and for our team, just with the platform of this, next gen car being somewhat spec, all the parts pieces, are for the most part are spec. And so I think that that's going to help us a tremendous amount. I think it's going to close the gap to the leaders for us, those big teams. And then I also too think, from my background of open wheel sports cars, I've driven cars very similar to what this next gen car is like, on tires and wheels and brakes and steering components and steering racks and all those things that a lot of these guys are experiencing for the first time and are having a hard time adapting, because our car currently is so unique. I mean, it's so unique that it doesn't correlate to anything else, where this next gen car will correlate to a lot of different forms of motorsports. So it's definitely going to be a big change. So I feel like the big change creates opportunity. The best teams will always be the best. They always rise to the top. You just give them time and they'll figure it out. But I do feel like it gives me an opportunity, and gives us an opportunity to have more than just 4 or 5 tracks that we can win on.
So, like, the last couple of months, there's been rumors and speculation about what Front Row Motorsports' future is going to be beyond this year. Like, have you officially re-signed with FRM for next year yet?
Nothing official yet, but it's always been the plan. I mean, there's not really any secrets here. We're a small kind of family run atmosphere here. So, I talk to the owner, Bob Jenkins. I talk to the general manager every week. We have these conversations. It's not like my agents, trying to get the lowdown of what's happening here. I just walk into the office and say, hey, what's happening? Are we good? Yeah, you're good. Okay, cool. Well, let me know when you want to sit down and go over it. So it's not a big concern of mine. I mean, there's obviously a lot of moving parts that are happening right now. And I don't know all the details of all the moving parts, but the parts that I do know, I feel good about. And, I'm not super nervous about what next year will look like currently.
I'm gonna jump in here, Daniel, real fast.
Okay.
So our dynamic. So Daniel's the journalist. He's worked for NBC and all that stuff. I'm just a fan that grew up on NASCAR and down in Arkansas. So with all the dirt tracks. So my interest with you is the I want to know your personal experience, right? Because it's cool to me to think about you had this long career, and you have this big win, this big moment. And I'm just kind of curious, how does this change the experience for you? When in next year, whenever you show back up to Daytona, are you do you walk in feeling like a new man almost, or, coming back to the race, that you won last year? Do you, when you're walking around the track now, do you feel like you suddenly have just a whole lot more friends around that wants to talk to you? Do you feel like you're getting a little bit more respect from the drivers or the other teams? That's kind of what I'm curious about.
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions in that, so I'll try to answer them as best I can.
Yeah. Just describe your experience,
Yeah. So, it obviously we've been back to Daytona a few times now, right? With the Roval, and then obviously, a few, probably months now ago, but, so yeah, there are certain elements that feel cool. As far as some of the history stuff, the museum, the Walk of Fame, all those things that you got to do as a Daytona 500 winner, those are fun and take them in, and they're cool moments. Me personally, just the way that I'm kind of wired and my personality, it doesn't add any swagger for me as far as walking in there. I've always been fairly confident, just in general, of my ability, and I've never really, struggled much with that. So it's didn't go up or down, if that makes sense. And as far as my competitors and guys I race with, it hasn't changed a whole lot, but I think that's because I've already, even before the win, earned the respect, if that makes sense. Because I've been grinding it out a long time, and most of those guys know that. And so the last few years have been a pretty good progression for me, as far as just every year it's been getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. So I don't feel much different at the racetrack, if that answers it. Some of the peripheral things, fans and experiences are different, which is fun and it's cool. But yeah, not so much in the actual inner circle, you know. I think a lot of people were happy for me and they were excited for me, which was fun, because you don't have that a lot in sports where people are, you know, they're not pulling for you necessarily, but if they can't win and you do and they're excited, that's fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's, you know, there's been a lot of cool experiences with it, but I think the one thing it did change for me, and this goes back to that, what you're talking about with just attitude and overall feel. And I noticed it the very next week when I went to Daytona again for the road course, was I didn't realize the amount of pressure and angst that I carried around, trying to get that first win. Right. So I've been in the sport a long time. I've been, you know, fighting a long time to be in a position to win a race. And I know the races I can have a legitimate shot at winning. And so going to a road course, going to a super speedway, I always had this feeling of like, this is it. I have to make it, has to happen today, has to happen now. If it doesn't happen now, it'll never happen. And I didn't realize I was carrying that around. So the second week when I went back to Daytona, it was just a weird feeling for me because on race day, I didn't have all that pressure, that extra weight. And it wasn't that I didn't care, because I still cared and I studied and I put all the work in, but it was like I said, I didn't realize I was carrying so much of feeling like it has to happen today, that if I don't do everything right, it'll never happen. Does that make sense?
Oh man, that resonates so much.
Yeah. So Daytona
Totally
road course, it was like, you know, I went in there feeling confident and prepared, but I also wasn't feeling this, you know, a lot of weight. And so, yeah, so I think it did change a few things, but not really, you know, a tremendous amount.
So like you mentioned you had to grind it out. Like you had 357 cup starts before the 500, before you won it. So that's over the course of about 13, 14 years. What kept Michael McDowell from just coming back for more year after year when it wasn't really working out for you at the cup level up to that point?
Yeah, you know, I think that if I had to break it down, I would say there's a lot of reasons, but let's just say three main things.
Okay.
One, the priority, the number one reason is my faith. Like I felt like, to me, I feel like God's given me an opportunity. I wanted to make the most of it. And even if it wasn't great, and even if it sucked at times, you know, I wanted to give it everything I had. And because I felt like it's, you know, to be one of 40 is still a privilege, right? So I never lost that competitive drive throughout all the starting parks and throughout all that. The second part of that would be, I always held on to the hope that if I kept working hard, kept myself in the sport, that one day I'd have an opportunity, you know, to run full time, to be competitive and to win a race. So I kind of always held on to that hope, and that was an important aspect of it. And then the third thing that I think sometimes gets overlooked, because when you think of NASCAR and you think of drivers, you think of guys that are flying on helicopters and planes and making millions of dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was not me. That is not me currently. And I was scraping just to get by those first 7 or 8 years. And so the third part of it was providing for my family. So when it was like, oh man, starting parking sucks, I had to remind myself that this is how I pay my bills, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes gets lost, because if you think about professional sports, you wouldn't think about it like that, right? You wouldn't think that somebody's, you know, doing it to literally, you know, pay the bills, but that's what I have had to do and have done for a long period of time. So even when it wasn't fun, or you felt like, man, I should do something else, this is, you know, where is this going? You know, I had to remind myself of kind of those three things: is that my faith, the hope that I could one day win, and because I needed to provide for my family.
So I guess sort of bouncing off of that, like if auto racing hadn't worked out for you, what would you have envisioned Michael McDowell's day job being at this point? Like what's alternate universe Michael McDowell doing right now?
Well, it depends at what phase of life. So 18-year-old Michael McDowell, if it didn't work out, I would have gone into the military for sure. No doubt about it. It's something I've always been passionate about. And, people say that, and I know that kind of sounds, yeah, sure you would, but it, even now I still think about, law enforcement, police department, all those things. So that would probably have been my number one then at 18. As I got further along in my career and it wasn't going well, say I'm on my 4th year starting parking, I had to think about that a lot of what am I going to do, because it's been so year to year for me. I mean, every year it's been like, okay, not sure if I'm going to have a job. And then it kind of works out. So I've had a lot of time to think about what that plan B would be. And as crazy as it is, as much time as I've had to think about it, I still haven't landed on anything. The generic answer would be, for me, the generic answer would be that I would be in ministry at some level, some point. What that looks like, I'm not really sure. There's a lot of things I'm passionate about. But at the same time, I've never felt like that would be a career. I always felt like that's a part of what I do, not a part of what I do for a living, if that makes sense. And so, and then the natural thing is something in racing, right? Like, this is all I've ever done. So, I think I understand a lot of different aspects of the sport, being that I've had to do a lot of different aspects through it all. So, if I had to get a job tomorrow, there's probably 4 or 5 things that I could do inside of motorsports that would pay the bills. But yeah, I haven't landed on what plan B is. And I think that's part of why I've stayed so committed. I think that, people go through transitions in their life where they feel like a door's closing and one's opening. I've had that door closing feeling a lot, but I haven't had that another door opening feeling. And so I've never been half in, half out. I've always been kind of all in, just because I haven't had that tug of, oh, okay, I should start this, or I should open this, or I should do this. I haven't really had that feeling yet.
So, like, speaking of doors opening, you got, I believe, was your first national TV commercial campaign this year with carparts.com. That was your first, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, like, I've only seen it once, well, outside of Twitter. Yeah. I saw it once at like 10 or 11 p.m. on Adult Swim on Cartoon Network when I was in Nashville to cover that race a few months ago. So what was it like for you to see yourself in a commercial like that for the first time? And how often have you seen it actually pop up on TV, if at all?
Yeah, I've seen it on TV organically like 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
I think it depends on what region you're in, because like my family on the West Coast, they see it a lot. So that's kind of interesting. I don't see it as much out here, but I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times. But it was a lot of fun. I think that the one thing I enjoyed about it was they being carparts.com let me kind of be myself as far as my personality. And most people don't know my personality just because of, you get an interview for 30 seconds and you're pretty serious, and you just got out of a 150-degree car and adrenaline's pumping, and it's just, that's not your normal self either. So most people that know me know that I'm pretty silly and goofy, and but the fans don't really know that because they only get these little glimpses. So it's fun that they let me kind of be myself.
Well, a couple episodes ago, me and Crow, we had a discussion about which Cup drivers has the biggest dad energy, and we settled on you unanimously. That you
have the biggest with that question.
I don't know if you take that as a badge of honor or not.
Yeah, well, I got a lot of kids, so that's good.
How many kids?
We have 4.
Okay, how old are they?
12, 9, 8, and 7.
Do they care about what dad does for a living?
They, yes and no. So each kid's a little bit different, but it's not what you would expect. It's not like they're blown away with it, right? Because they're so used to it. So they kind of take it, traveling to the track and all that a little bit. That's their everyday life. So they take it a little bit granted. But at the same time, there's elements that are cool to them. Me not being one of those elements. So it's a pretty good balance. I think that it's tough. I think it's tough on families to kind of grow up in the spotlight and kind of being around people all the time. It's hard to be authentic, even when you're traveling, you're on the team plane, and you know what I mean? It's just like, you got to keep everybody together and but my kids have done really well with it. They enjoy being at the races. Their community's there at the racetrack with other families. And so we've enjoyed it.
Okay. So I think we're starting to run out of time. So I just want to rattle off, I guess, a few quick questions. So I didn't realize that you made your NASCAR debut in the truck series at Martinsville, racing for Darrel Waltrip.
Yeah.
So how does Michael McDowell wind up in a truck at Martinsville driving for Darrel Waltrip?
Yeah. So it all came together really quickly. I'm going to try to give you a short version. I was racing for a championship in ARCA. I got hired by Michael Waltrip Racing before that was over to replace Dale Jarrett. Even though I didn't replace Dale Jarrett, David Rudiman did.
Okay.
I did. That was my team that I went into. They just changed the number. But we learned through that process that I had to get approved. And in order for me to get approved, I had to run a truck at a short track, a Xfinity car at 1.5 miles after that short track, and then an Xfinity car at a super speedway before they would approve me for all the racetracks in Cup. And that all happened really last minute.
Okay.
And so there was only 5 races left in the season in 2007. So I had to just jump in all of those that fit that mark before I could get approved by NASCAR to run in the Cup Series. So obviously Darrel Waltrip, brother with Michael Waltrip, he had an extra truck sitting there. My ARCA team went over and grabbed it and put it together. And we went to Martinsville, and you'll have to pull it up because drivers exaggerate. But there was I don't know how many trucks were allowed to race then, but there was 10 or 15 go-homers. And it was Jacques Villeneuve, Dario Franchitti, Sam Hornish, all these guys that were trying to do the same thing that were going to be rookies in my rookie class. And so it was a really tough race to make, even at Martinsville, a truck race. And so it was pretty intense that weekend. But yeah, that's how I got to drive for Darrel. Is he had an extra truck laying around. We went over there and grabbed it. My crew chief, Patrick Donahue, on my ARCA car, got the guys together, put it together, and we went to Martinsville.
Okay, I guess my last question, I'll see if Crow has one, is you at Bristol, you chose for your intro song Options by NF.
Yeah.
And I listened to it, I was like, that's not a song I would think that Michael McDowell would cruise down the highway to.
Why not?
I don't know. It's just not the vibe you bring. So I'm curious.
That's what I mean. People don't know me well enough. I'm a lyrical gangster.
That's the title of this podcast now.
So here's the thing. Let me elaborate. So I don't know if you've listened to any of his stuff. It's all clean. So all the rap that I listen to is all clean. Usually Christian artists. I have some friends that Tadashi and those guys that are Christian artists. And that song Options, it fit good for Bristol because I had no option. I had to win. Right.
Okay.
So the options are win. That's it. But that song has been my, I don't know what you want to call it, anthem the last 18 months.
Really?
Is every year I feel like I'm at the end of my career and I got no other options. Right. And so, the lyrics are, I got to make it or make it. And so those are my options. I have to make it or make it. Okay. And, not in the next round of the playoffs, but I had to, I'll just say it. I had to win a race this year to keep doing what I'm doing, to keep my job. I have to keep having those moments in order to stay in it. So you start running out of options. And so that's kind of been my anthem song for the last little bit. Yeah. So yeah, I know you're not the first person that say that, man, I wouldn't have thought you as a lyrical gangster, but I am.
Hey, Daniel, I've pointed out to you before that if you remember Mark Martin, big rap fan.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It
You're
always surprised
absolutely right.
everyone.
Yeah,
So
but I mean, to be 100% transparent, most of the time I'm just listening to Caleb on the radio. But for me, when I go to work out or if I'm doing something intense or you want to have something like that, that would be it. Okay, I gotta go.
Thank you very much for meeting with us, and it's been great following you all year.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for joining Dropping the Hammer.
All right, bye.
McDowell, I hope you enjoyed it. It was a good time. Got some great stories. We have a new nickname for Michael McDowell. I'm going to ask everyone listening who listens to this to post about this podcast episode with the hashtag tag Michael McDowell and then hashtag Lyrical Gangster. We have to make this a thing. We just have to. If this podcast exists for any sole thing, it's to get Lyrical Gangster trending, or just have that associated with Michael McDowell by the end of the year. So
Daniel, I think our winter project, or your winter project that I'm going to assign to you, is that I think you need to send out a survey to find out every driver's top 10 songs of the year, or the top 10 songs that they listen to get pumped up. We need to find out who's listening to the best music and who's listening to the worst music, and who's listening to music that does not fit their personality whatsoever.
Well, Michael McDowell's at the top of that last list. As we discuss as we discussed. So, but yes, Michael McDowell, Lyrical Gangster, hashtag that, please. I want that far and wide. But anyway, please subscribe to us on YouTube at Daniel McFadden please subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/Daniel McFadden. Like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. Follow me on Twitter at Daniel McFadden. You can follow Crow at DTH Crow.
I will post about this. Therefore, I will use it between now and the next episode.
So, but yes, this was a fun time. I'm glad we got to do this after Michael's elimination for the playoffs. Well worth it.
An amazing season.
And that was one question I meant to ask him. Like, before he won the 500, how did he envision his best career as? Never mind. Anyway, thank you for joining us on this very special episode of Dropping the Hammer. I'm Daniel McFadden.
I'm not.
That's Crow. But thank you for joining us, and please tune in next week when we recap Talladega. I'm taking screw it. I'm taking Michael McDowell to win.
Me too. We've got to. We're both taking Michael McDowell. We're gonna believe. We're gonna hold out that hope. He's gonna be the spoiler of the playoffs, and he's gonna get that win.
I think that would just be appropriate. The guy who just had a horrible playoff round and got eliminated wins at Talladega and has a tangible impact on the playoffs. I think that'd be great. So, but anyway, again, wrapping up again. Thank you for listening to Dropping the Hammer with Daniel McFadden. I'm Daniel McFadden. Have a great weekend.